Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. We have breaking news just coming in. And the statement just read on Saudi state television. Saudi Arabia confirms that the journalist Jamal Khashoggi is dead. Quickly want to go to CNN's Clarissa Ward. She's in Ankara, Turkey for us. She's following these late-breaking developments. I take it the Saudis, Clarissa, are now releasing a report on what they say happened to Jamal Khashoggi.
That's right. So we've heard, Wolf, in a state news bulletin on state television that there are essentially two main components to what is going to happen. Saudi Arabia announcing that the king himself, the most powerful man in the country, has ordered that a committee which will be comprised of the Interior Ministry, the Foreign Ministry, and National Security have all been tasked with coming together to issue a full and extensive investigative report into exactly what happened to Jamal Khashoggi, how it was he was killed. That report is to be delivered in 1 month's time. So Saudis buying themselves a little bit of wiggle room here. But in the immediate time, though, Wolf, there is big news, which is that they're also announcing that they have dismissed General Ahmed al-Asiri. Now, you may be remembering, Wolf, that since Tuesday, we have been reporting that a former military officer, very high up in intelligence, was the one who was in charge of this mission. We can now confirm to you, we did not name him out of an abundance of caution before. We can now confirm to you this is consistent with our reporting of the past 3 days. The man in question was Ahmed al-Asiri. He used to be the spokesperson for the coalition that was overseeing the campaign, the war in Yemen. He is well known to be part of the Crown Prince's inner circle. We can now confirm Saudi state television saying that General Ahmed al-Asiri has been relieved of his position. Wolf, this is a significant move. This is a very high-ranking official, and this is presumably the first of several other dismissals. There were some other dismissals announced as well, but none anywhere near as high-ranking as General al-Asiri. But as I said before, the other headline, along with the dismissal of al-Asiri, is that they now have 1 month, National Security, Interior Ministry, Foreign Ministry, to put together essentially a report, a commission that will get to the bottom of how it was that Khashoggi was killed, Wolf.
All right, that's significant, the fact that they've now fired this General Ahmed al-Asiri. There were suggestions, reports earlier in the week that he was going to be the fall guy. Looks like that is unfolding right now. Quickly, I want you to stand by, Clarissa. Elise Labin is monitoring developments as well. What are you learning, Elise?
Well, Wolf, in this Saudi statement, in addition to Ahmed al-Asiri, who is, as Clarissa said, one of the senior advisors to Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, he was, as she said, the coalition spokesman. But Mohammed bin Salman had taken a liking to al-Asiri. He took him over. He's the deputy head of intelligence and a senior advisor. In addition to that, another senior advisor, Saud al-Qahtani. Now, he's not as senior as al-Asiri, but a very top advisor in the inner circle. And why is he important, Wolf? Because Saud al-Qahtani is somebody who had been speaking with Jamal Khashoggi over the last year, trying to get him back into the fold. There was a lot of, as we've been discussing, a lot of consternation about his criticism of the regime of Mohammed bin Salman. And this was one of Khashoggi's main interlocutors, saying, stop your criticism, stop the criticism on Twitter about Donald Trump, come back into the fold, we'll give you a position, we'll start a think tank for you. He has also gone along, Wolf, with 5 top intelligence officers. Of course, the main question here, with so many of Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince's advisors in his inner circle, fingered in the killing of Jamal, the question is, what did the Crown Prince know? What did he authorize? And when did he know it, Wolf?
I want you to stand by. Clarissa's getting more details in Turkey right now. What else are you learning, Clarissa?
So we're also learning, Wolf, that along with the dismissal of General Ahmed al-Asiri, which, as I pointed out before, is important for a number of reasons, 18 Saudi nationals have been detained. 18 Saudi nationals. One other thing I want to mention, Wolf, because it does bear mentioning to our U.S. audience, it is currently 1 in the morning in Saudi Arabia. Not uncommon to see these, to see major news being broken so late in the night in Saudi Arabia. I believe when it was announced that the Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman would become the now Crown Prince, that announcement was made at 3 in the morning. Now, we're also learning that apparently, according to the Prosecutor General, it was a fist fight that led to the death of Jamal Khashoggi. A fist fight that led to the death of Jamal Khashoggi. You may remember the details that we had heard up until this point from Turkish officials who were responding to the tape, the alleged audio that exists of this whole thing. They said there was some kind of an interrogation, some kind of a struggle that then led to Jamal Khashoggi's death. Not exactly clear yet how a fistfight could result in the death of a journalist. That presumably is what the Saudis will want to spend the next month reviewing with the national security involved Interior Ministry and Foreign Ministry, as I said. But certainly this is a significant moment. We have not seen anything quite like this from the kingdom, certainly any time that I can remember. But 18 Saudi nationals detained, one incredibly important senior advisor to the prince himself also dismissed from his position, and revelations now starting to come out as to exactly how, Wolf, Jamal Khashoggi died.
I just want to be precise, Clarissa. 18 Saudi nationals now detained, meaning they've been arrested by the Saudi government. Does that include among the 18 General Ahmed al-Asiri and Saad al-Qahtani, these two very high-ranking Saudi officials?
Well, we do know that Saad al-Qahtani, as you said, extremely high-ranking, that he has been detained. We know so far that General Ahmed al-Asiri has been dismissed from his position. As I said before, he is the one who oversaw the entire operation. A former military official, used to be the spokesperson for the coalition that is fighting that war in Yemen, a senior advisor, part of the Crown Prince's inner circle. He has been dismissed from his position. Qahtani has been also detained. This is momentous. We haven't seen anything like this coming out of the kingdom for a very long time.
All right, and so they say that Jamal Khashoggi died as a result of a fist fight at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. We know he walked in. He was fine walking in. He never walked out. Something happened inside. Walk us through what they're saying about a fist fight all of a sudden resulting in his death.
Well, it's interesting, Wolf, because the Saudis have only really just begun to sketch out the bare bones of a narrative. They clearly want to buy themselves some more time by having this larger, more detailed report that won't come from a month. But if you think back to what we have been hearing from Turkish officials who have been sort of leaking elements of this audio tape that reportedly captured the entire event, what we heard again and again essentially was that Jamal Khashoggi walked in there essentially to do something as mundane as to renew, to get some paperwork that would show that he was single, that would allow him to marry his fiancée here in Turkey. He was quickly taken into another room. He was interrogated. There was some kind of violence that went on. The Saudis clearly categorizing that as a fistfight. Up until then, we had simply heard that it was some kind of a violent altercation. And then somehow, and this really is the missing link, somehow that ends with Jamal Khashoggi being dead, and according to Turkish officials, then his body being dismembered, cut into little pieces. And there are still a lot of questions, I should add, Wolf. Where is that body? That is the one thing Turkish officials will be wanting to know. It is something that this state news bulletin from Saudi Arabia does not appear to address. Where is the body? And still, of course, who gave the order for this operation? What was the express purpose of this operation? How does a fistfight end up with a dismembered journalist? Well,
especially when there were 15 15 Saudi nationals inside the consulate who were all flown over basically that day to deal with Jamal Khashoggi. Stand by, Clarissa, because Elise is getting new information as well. Elise Labott is joining us. Elise, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, just returned to the United States from Saudi Arabia. Was he informed of these kinds of specific details while he was there?
He was not, Wolf. The Saudis were very short on specifics, but officials have said that Secretary Pompeo gave a very stern warning to Mohammed bin Salman and the king, saying you need to have an investigation. It needs to be credible, and all of the details are going to come out. So you need to be upfront about what you know and what happened, and gave a warning to Mohammed bin Salman that his future as king is at stake, Wolf. And from talking to sources in the region, that's one of the reasons that this came out tonight at this late hour. As we know, the Saudis are prone to have these late night revelations and announcements. But why is it today on a weekend in Saudi Arabia? They're still rounding up the weekend there because Secretary Pompeo reportedly gave a 72-hour deadline to the Saudis to come out with something, and sources said that they knew that they had to meet the deadline and they wanted to meet it. Now, as Clarissa said, a lot that is unknown, particularly what was the mission here, the mandate. Was it just to interrogate Jamal? Was it to render him, to kidnap him and bring him back home? And what did the Crown Prince know at that time? Sources say that the Saudis know no one is going to come out looking good in this, Wolf, but they're going to try and be as upfront as they can. But you also saw, Saudi supporters of Mohammed bin Salman saying tonight that the perpetrators need to be brought to justice, but at the same time, the stability of the kingdom, the stability indeed of the region is at stake, Wolf, and that's really in the minds of the Saudis and the United States and even the Turks as they work their way through this.
I want to go to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia right now. Our international correspondent, Sam Kiley. Sam, I take it you watched all of this unfold on official Saudi state TV. Walk us through what they're saying over there.
Well, you wouldn't have imagined, Wolf, that this was a momentous announcement with the sound down, which is how it first came up to us. It just looked like a regular newscast, almost a discussion between the newscasters. But very rapidly, the details started to emerge, and they are very consistent with what we had been led to believe would be the case for our own sources over the last few days. Just to recap, they announced that 18 officials, Saudis, have been detained. That Ahmed al-Asiri, who is the head of general intelligence here, very, very senior intelligence official, former spokesman for the Saudi war operation in the Yemen, very hard-line spokesman he was too during that period. He's been detained. The assumption is here that all of the 15 individuals named by the Turks, but we haven't seen a full list of them yet, from the Saudis, would be among those 18, plus some other officials, notably Saud Qahtani, who is a very intimate official in the royal court. Now, both Asiri and Qahtani are very, very close indeed to the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, and this is clearly a house cleaning operation of some considerable import. Never actually in the history probably of modern Saudi Arabia has there been quite such a dramatic move against so many people who are so close to the center of power. Bodyguards, the head of intelligence, intimates of the royal court, and a signal really that the Saudis had eventually had to bow to the steady leak of the series of leaks that were coming out of Turkey. Turkey, of course, has been arguing all along that it had definitive intelligence on this plot, that Mr. Khashoggi was killed within a couple of hours of arriving in that consulate on October the 2nd, largely based, it is assumed, on bugging equipment planted by the Turks. The United States flew their Secretary of State over here, met for 40 minutes with the Crown Prince, and now early on a Saturday morning, about 1 o'clock local time AM, we get this announcement. This is not uncommon in Saudi Arabia, partly because people are quite late night people here anyway. It's not quite prime time, but nor is it quite the small hours that it would be in the Western world. But it is a moment that Saudi Arabia has taken to draw breath and try to protect the House of Saud. Whether that is successful in terms of defining the future life and longevity as a potential king in his role as Crown Prince for Mohammed bin Salman may well depend what comes out of this report that's due to be published in about a month's time, Wolf, according to the Saudi news broadcast. But it is a very dramatic moment indeed, and a moment, I think, in which the House of Saud has had to move and bow to international pressure like never before, Wolf.
And very quickly, Sam, what, if anything, are the Saudis saying about what the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, actually knew about this plot to go ahead and aid, detain, and eventually kill Jamal Khashoggi?
Well, those details have not yet emerged as far as I'm aware, Wolf, but the plan, the statements in the past have been consistent that he knew nothing about it and this was a rogue element. And that's the sort of language that we've had in translation from the newscasters. They're simply saying that this was a plot, that Mr. Khashoggi was murdered, but there is no indication whatsoever that there's any kind of finger pointing towards the Crown Prince, Wolf.
All right, stand by, Sam. I know you're working your sources over there in Riyadh. It's 1:16 a.m. right now in Saudi Arabia. I want to go to the White House. Caitlin Collins is getting reaction, I suspect. Earlier in the week, we did hear the president say, Caitlin, that he had heard that, quote, rogue killers may have been responsible. What the Saudis are now suggesting is that, yes, rogue killers may have been responsible for the death of Jamal Khashoggi.
That's right, Wolf. And the question now is going to be, who does the White House believe here? Now, of course, this is coming out. We know the White House is tracking these developments as we're learning about them ourselves, coming from Saudi state television. So they are keeping track of that. But we did hear from President Trump on this earlier. So you have to wonder, they're giving this 1 month timeline of this investigation. But earlier, when President Trump, who is out west right now, was speaking to reporters, he said he hoped to know more by Monday and that he already knew a lot. Of course, that's going to raise the question of what exactly is it that the president knew, and did he know that Jamal Khashoggi is dead now that the Saudi state television is confirming as much? Now, one of those questions, Wolf, that he was asked about is if it is found that the Saudis are responsible for the death of this reporter, what are the consequences going to be? He said he wasn't ready to start talking about that yet, but that this was serious stuff and that he wanted to get to the bottom of it. And then when it came to that decision, that time to have action and make a decision on what to do in response to this, he did want to keep Congress involved. Now, Wolf, most people took that to believe that he was talking about sanctions, but he did say he was going to make recommendations to Congress about that arms deal that is in the works, and essentially saying he didn't want it to affect the arms deal, that he thought there were other avenues to explore there. So he said he would make recommendations to Congress, essentially saying it would be something along those lines of that arms deal. But as you heard Clarissa saying, you know, the questions now are, who are they going to blame? Because so far the president, though he has come closer to acknowledging that this reporter was killed in the Saudi consulate, he has not pointed the fingers at the Saudi Crown Prince as others have, and he hasn't said exactly what the consequences are going to be if it is found that they are responsible for this. And Wolf, as you pointed out earlier in the week, the president suggested rogue killers could be responsible for this. So the question is going to be, is he going to buy Saudi denials, even if other people don't believe them? And
as you know, Caitlin, the president earlier said within the next 2 or 3 days, maybe by Monday, they'll get the complete report. But the Saudi statement says they need another 30 days right now to continue their investigation.
And that's likely not going to be a timeline that is going to make a lot of people here in Washington happy, because even some of the president's allies have been demanding answers. Wolf, it has been over 2 weeks since Jamal Khashoggi entered that Saudi consulate and never came out. Of course, the Saudis initially said that he did leave the embassy, but now they're saying he's dead. So that's going to raise even more questions about what it was they told Secretary of State Mike Pompeo when he visited Riyadh, because when he left that trip, he was asked point blank, do you believe that this reporter is dead or alive? He said he didn't want to talk about the facts, that the Saudis weren't ready to talk about the facts. But Wolf, that simply is not going to be an answer that's going to suffice for a lot of people in the coming days.
All right, Caitlin, we're going to get back to you. I know you're working your sources. I anticipate a formal statement coming from the White House. We have our correspondents in Turkey and Saudi Arabia all over. They're watching this story. Much more on the breaking news right after this.